There are a ton of benefits to shooting with a micro four thirds system. And unfortunately, easily achieving a shallow depth of field isn't one of them. That's why this lens is so important. I'm Joe Baker, and welcome to Excursion Cuts. So I was recently in the market for a 50mm equivalent prime lens, because I only owned one. So I figured I'd go for something fast. For a while there, I was looking at the Panasonic Leica f1.4. Beautiful lens, beautiful bokeh, a little on the pricey side. So I started shopping around. So I came across a couple of lenses that had an aperture of 0.95. One was made by Voigtlander, 25mm, 50mm equivalent, f.095. And then this one, the Mitakon 25mm, also f.095. Now, those two lenses I have not had a chance to compare. I've never had my hands on the Voigtlander. I have read some reviews on it, watched a few YouTube videos. From what I gather, it's definitely comparable to this lens. You would be comparing apples to apples with this particular lens. The Voigtlander one, on the other hand, is a little on the pricey side at about $1,000. This one comes in at less than a third of that, at about $300 US. So for me, if there was any difference in, say, sharpness or anything between the Voigtlander versus this lens, I think that's just going to be diminishing returns if you really consider the price point of these two lenses. So I know that f.95 lenses are not really common. And to be clear, we are talking about f-stop here as opposed to t-stop. F-stop, if you're not familiar, is basically a measurement of the diameter that the aperture blades create, whereas t-stop is more of a measurement of the amount of light that's able to pass through your lens and hit your sensor. T-stop's a bit more precise, it's a little more complicated of a calculation. Photographers, when we talk about lenses, we're referring to the aperture in terms of f-stop. So there's probably some reasonable debate as to whether or not this is a true f.95 lens. But really, for my purposes, I'm just going to talk about what it means for depth of field. And what it means for me is this is an extremely thin plane of focus when it's wide open at 0.95, much thinner than any other lens that I own. So let me tell you about some of the features of this lens and why I decided to go with it. First and foremost, it's sharp wide open. And that matters. If we're talking about a lens that is f.95, most people are going to shoot at f.95 most of the time with this lens. That's the whole point, right? We want that beautiful bokeh. But if the image falls apart when wide open, what's the point? This is reasonably sharp wide open. Now I say reasonably sharp because we can expect a little bit of softening in pretty much any lens. Unless we get up into the quadruple digit price range, that's to be expected. But these shots are totally usable, both with stills and with video. Second, the build quality is solid. It feels like a tank. It's metal build, it feels heavy. The rings feel really nice. The declicked aperture blade and the focus ring turn very smoothly. Just enough resistance to make them stay in one spot once you've set your settings. For usability, it also has a 43mm thread so you can attach ND filters or circular polarizers. That's going to be important too, especially if you're shooting video outdoors and you want to shoot wide open, you really want to get that beautiful bokeh, you're definitely going to need ND filters for this lens. Now I should say this, several times over my photography and videography career, I have gone out on a limb and I've rolled the dice on a lens that comes from overseas, such as China or from Japan, like the Sanyang, the Bauer, the Rokinon lenses. And some people may actually report suspected inconsistencies in their testing, meaning there's a possibility of getting a really good copy of a particular lens and then somebody else getting kind of a dud copy, having things wrong with it. Now, I'm pleased to say with this particular copy, I have not had any issues. But in the interest of being honest and making sure that you guys are making an informed decision when you're searching for lenses, definitely check out other YouTube videos. I've come across a couple of people who have reported some kind of resistance with the rings and it being described as feeling something like sand in the rings. Again, I haven't had an experience with that, so I'm happy to report, but it's definitely something to consider. It is possible that there's some inconsistency with their testing regulations. This is a fully manual lens, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. Just kind of depends on what kind of things you shoot, whether you're shooting video, whether you're shooting stills. For me, it's not a big issue. I come from video. I've been doing that longer than photography. I'm perfectly fine manually focusing. But this lens is f.95. And if you're shooting wide open, if you're shooting stills, you just got to consider your subject. If you're the type of person who shoots action-y type stuff, if you shoot sports and those types of things, this lens is going to be a pain in your ass. It's going to be really difficult to nail focus. Now, it's a micro four thirds lens, so you can definitely be, utilizing your focus assist like focus peaking. You're going to want to punch in and not rely solely on focus peaking. Focus peaking will give you the general gist of what's in focus, But if you're shooting a portrait, quick tip if you're shooting portraits, by the way, you usually don't want somebody standing square to the camera like I am now. You're usually going to want them a little bit off to the side where one eye is closer to you than the other. And in that case, you're going to want to focus on the eye that's closest to the camera. You're going to want to punch in and really take a look at that iris and those eyelashes and make sure that they're truly in focus. Because it may appear that the focus peaking is telling you that the entire head is in focus, when in fact, the tip of the nose is in focus and the eye is actually a little bit soft. So just be careful with that. Now you can see, even in a vlog style like this, I kind of have a setup where we've got the lights, I've got my camera on sticks, I set my focus and I'm leaving it alone. I'm not wide open on this lens right now, because I can't afford to be. I don't want to be leaning back and forth and going in and out of focus. So I'm at about f1.4 right now, which is actually pretty decent. I think I'm going to be holding focus just fine. Of course, as mentioned at the beginning of this video, price was a huge factor in making my decision on purchasing this lens, especially over the Voigtlander one. Voigtlander, again, I believe is in the quadruple digits or pretty darn close to it. This lens, while you can get it much cheaper, and it's basically the same lens, there's a lot of variance online. You can find it on Amazon, you can find it on eBay, you can find it as cheap as about $300. I'll have a link to that price in the description box below, but I've also seen this one go well above $500. So it's just going to depend on the dealer and where you're buying it from. If you don't mind waiting a little bit, you can get this lens as little as about $300. Well, there you have it, folks. That's my take on the Mitakon 25mm f0.95 lens for micro four thirds cameras. Would you like to learn more about photography and cinematography? Are you into travel videos? Consider subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video.